and I think, it's a really useful conversation. I mean, where we started with the Kahneman, the baseball. We didn't record that part, but
and I just now hit record again, so I kind of didn't record anything I just said. So
fine. Right, just the opportunity of going down, and it's funny because when we talk about what we're talking about, legacy and leadership and leverage, and you and I are both more woo-woo than say, I don't know, it's not just a business conversation. It's not just it is on one level just out of, it's definitely stepping out of the GCI frame, right. Stepping out of the press of the conversation, or the force field, as Jeff Wilmore would say, of what we're thrown to. And so we're sort of geared there. There's a tendency or a relying on going with your gut, like that makes sense in a lot. Trust yourself, something that people say a lot, in this sort of realm. And on one hand, yay, for sure, right? On another hand, our gut is wrong. When it comes to complex, certainly when it comes to complex, multivariable problems, our gut reaction is to not think it through, is to not actually do the work to think through. You were talking about the CEO of Fannie Mae.
Yeah.
The gut reaction there is to do something. Right. Act.
Yeah. Rescue. Save the day.
Save the day. You're doing but when you're dealing with a multi-variable problem with lots of different facets and complex facets and facets that you may not all be familiar with, the opportunity is in the slowing down, is in the rational taking apart of the situation and examining it. And I think the more you do that, the more you can trust your gut when it's appropriate. Mm-hmm. I don't know. There's some correlation there between, if you've done the work to slow down, you've created luck favors the prepared mind. I don't know, some version of that, right? Yeah. Trusting your gut will work if you've done the work. As opposed to if you're just constantly flying off with, well, now I feel like this, now I feel like this, now I feel like this. Right. Try this, try that, try this. That's all going with your gut too on one level, right?
Yeah. Reminds me of parts work. If you go into, different coaching modalities and you think about, there are different parts of our conscious. I think Carl Jung did a ton of work around the parts of self. And, I could see that in the conversation of your gut, the parts of your gut. Like there's the part of your gut that is instinctive or reactionary. Like my gut is to flee the danger. My gut is to run out and save the company. My gut is to not slow down and whatever.
Right. Especially in the hustle culture.
Yeah.
You've got to do something.
That's the part we didn't record, where I'm just like, I'm seeing that for myself as a solopreneur, like the idea that I could slow down and be present in this space in between, having the right people on my bus, which is what inspired this conversation, because we were talking about the good to great, right? But having the right people on my bus, which they're not here yet, or some are here, but some aren't. Like there's a waiting of that.
Right.
And in that space where it's uncomfortable, and back to Fannie Mae, who was at the time of the book was losing in their study was losing $1 million a day before the turnaround. Mm-hmm. If that were me, like I'm not losing $1 million a day, and I'm still completely uncomfortable with, and I have the discipline because I'm being disciplined in it, but I'm
Right.
also present to how uncomfortable it is to not want to just go rush into activity so I can get the dopamine hits of feeling productive.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting, Chris, because the press to act, like don't just sit there, do something,
Right.
is,
Yeah.
That's that's not even a flag that we fly. That's, something we are,
Yeah.
we've been indoctrinated,
Mm-hmm.
and more and more in this whole world of, I rail against the appification of real estate, because of the danger it poses to individuals who succumb to it, because it's all about bypassing any sort of rational judgment and making it as simple as possible, which is code for, just do this, you don't have to think about it, like it's funny because I'm, on one hand, I mean, if you're optimizing your website, you better be optimizing your website for where are people's eyeballs and where do people click, and, like that. You've got to do that work if you're optimizing your website. I'm just getting into it on a different course that I'm on to. But at the same time, that is, if you have an unlimited budget like Facebook or Redfin or Red Rocket Mortgage or someone, and you got, you are going to get that thing tuned in. And really what that means is you are making sure that your website puts itself in the path of least resistance of the user's brain, that there's as little thinking that they need to do as possible. Or any thinking they do leads them to the result called they buy your product. And I think that one of the things that we keep creating is this opportunity to slow down when it comes to building our businesses and what our lives are for and what our businesses are for and what we're really doing here in terms of legacy. Is there is no simple answer to that. And I think people, the tribe that shows up around this question is going to be people that are willing to engage and go through that first uncomfortable space of, I don't have time for this. And how is this going to help? And all the immediate stuff that's there in system one thinking, in the survival, in the, in the gut, how's this, it's why GCI is such a simple conversation for people, because it cuts right through all that other stuff and just gets to, there's no thinking needed. Is this going to turn into a deal?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's really, it's, it becomes part of the identity. Like it's hard to stop and have a conversation that could unravel my character, my identity, not my characters and my moral character, but the persona I'm playing. Like when, and I found that for so long when I was in real estate, and it wasn't like I was being insincere about it. I was all in. I was all in on MREA. I was all in on, Keller Williams, because that's where I was. I just meant a lot to me, and I felt like it raised me in some ways. It taught me to think. It taught me all these things. And in the process of doing it, there became this identity where it became hard to think critically, any other way. My instinct and my gut went a particular direction because that's what I favored, and that's what my identity related to. It was hard to see other business models, like the way we use it as a business model conversation. Like it was hard for me to see Keller Williams could do no wrong in my eyes.
Right.
It was the holy grail, and every other company was not up to par. And so it was arrogant, but two, it cut off the opportunity to see what other things were there, possible, available. And my gut was, I guess there'd take some time to unpack what was influencing those decisions. But
well, I think when I get all in, and I was certainly that way at KW. I've been that way with other jobs I've had. getting all in like that, it's funny when you take that apart, what is really underneath being all in on something? It's eliminating all the other distractions. You're eliminating all the other possibilities. You know, it eliminates any sort of critical thinking. You know, it's funny because when you say it when I'm talking about it like this way, if I don't know how people are going to hear this, but I suspect that this will show up for people in a particular way. But you know, do not talk to me about EXP. You know, when I was a KW, I was like, don't know. You know, if there was any kind of hint of recruiting, and I know that I got that reaction when I was at KW talking to other agents, and I certainly get that reaction now at EXP talking to other agents. There's don't talk to me about that, right? Like, and there's on one hand, you know, I mean, on one hand, fine, it's a closing down of distractions because, you know, I mean, if it all looks like the difference between Geico and Progressive, why are we having this conversation, right? Who cares, right? It's going to be the same thing at the end of the day.
Yeah. Right.
So I don't need the distraction. How much better is it going to be? At the same time, you know, if you looked at it from a different perspective, it's not about the distraction that it is. It's about, I'm not going to expend the mental effort to actually see if this situation is the best situation for me, or I'm unwilling to expend that mental effort to do that. And rarely do people contextualize it that way, which is a perfectly valid way to contextualize it, frankly. I mean, if that's the truth of it, listen, I am unwilling to expend the mental effort of that. From my vantage point, it doesn't look like that could give me enough of an advantage that it would make it worth doing the work to figure it out. But that would be straight, because that's really what it's about, is are you willing to expend the mental effort to look to see, you know, is your situation the most advantageous for what you're really up to? And really, Chris, when you get engaged with people, even the conversation called "What am I really up to?" requires an enormous amount of intellectual effort. It's one of the most confronting things people need to deal with, you know, is what is my life for?
Right. Yeah. Talk about an inconvenient distraction, you know, to the programming and the treadmill that I'm on. Like, I can't jump off this treadmill, use the energy to start another treadmill. And I definitely don't feel like I can be on two treadmills at once. Like, this is how, and that's not the way it is, but that's how it occurs. Like, you know, that to entertain the conversation of legacy and my important work of my life is can feel like an entirely different treadmill I have to run on at the same time as running on the one I'm on now in real estate. And that's how it may occur, but that's not the truth of it. But if you don't do the critical thinking of it, then your gut instinct can be, well, no, I don't have time for that. I'm not willing to spend the mental energy
is going to be that. That is for sure going to be the gut instinct. There is that I don't have time for this. I don't wake up in the morning and have any other gut instinct that I don't have time for anything, right? So it's always the go-to, right?
Right.
And you know, time and money in our culture are the two go-to, you know, things that we aren't going to actually stop and think. Now that I say it out loud, I'm like, oh my God, I got to go through my bank account. It's probably been 6 weeks since I've gone through and checked my expenditures just to make sure that it's all straight. But you know, because it requires a stopping and a planning, and you know, this is one of those, you know, we consistently overestimate what we can get done in a day and underestimate what we can get done in a year, because we're, you know, the opportunity of small gains doesn't show up for us as an opportunity. It's too small in the moment, and we are short-term survival-based thinking animals. That's the $10 thing, is we're short-based, survival-based animals. And until we get responsible for that, you know, like, just can own it, just can be like, that's right. You know, and it was always the big thing out of the forum is, you know, people get a glimpse of that which they've been avoiding thinking about, and the impact of not having thought it through. You know, and who made those decisions? You know, I mean, that's always the biggest aha people walk out of the forum with is, oh my God, my life's been run by a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
An upset 5-year-old has decided all of this. There's no, and I've been fine with it. I've been fine with that 5-year-old's decision. No, I don't speak to my mom, you
Yeah.
know,
Right.
never mind that she's crazy,
Yeah.
right? But that's what the 5-year-old said. And so you have a chance to get responsible for that. Get, like, oh, wait, I did that. I said that. I made that up.
It's a really interesting, to me, real estate is a really interesting dichotomy of personal growth. Like I found a lot of personal development in real estate, like, going to work on myself, how to think about things, self-help. A lot of that came out of real estate. But it's interesting because it was only in service to a particular frame, because the stuff you're talking about, the idea to slow down and take some time or to think critically about, like, what is my life for, is to me the ultimate personal development conversation, because you have this life. What are you going to do with it? Well, I don't have time for that. But hold on while I go read a personal development book on how I can increase my GCI. You're like, yeah.
Right. I don't have time for that. It's just the funniest thing, right? And I'm in that game, I'm in that comedy of errors, right? With everybody, it's not like I don't do that. Right. It's just the funniest thing is I don't have time to determine what my life is for.
Right.
Just take that sentence apart. I don't have the time. I'm too busy living my life. I'm too busy. But and are you really living your life, or is your life just living through you?
Yeah.
I accidentally, it's funny because I occasionally will find a stupid meme or something I'll send my daughter on Instagram or whatever. And I accidentally sent her one about living an intentional life. It wasn't a stupid meme. It was one of the, some, not Gary Vaynerchuk, but, sort of a more serious, more conversation about living an intentional life. She was like, don't ever send me this again. She's not a request for coaching from me.
Yeah.
And had I watched it, I could see myself sending it to her, because it was straight up. There's nothing wrong with it. It was like, look, most people don't live an intentional life. Most people, no one, what was the theme of it? It was like, no one ever walks upstairs accidentally.
Right.
If you're going to go somewhere, it's got to be intentional. And I think that's really the purpose of what you and I are building here, is the opportunity of having an intentional business, that starts with the end of which is what we're calling legacy, of what it is you're out to leave out of your business.
Yeah.
Creating an intentional business. It's good. We haven't had that as a catchphrase yet, but there's.
Say it again.
Creating an intentional business.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Something in there too.
I think I like that because it feels constructive, it feels productive. It feels, it doesn't feel like an extra thing.
Right. Exactly. Right. It doesn't. That's right. And that's the point of what we're doing. This is not an extra thing. This isn't like, keep doing what you're doing. And at the same time, you're going to have this new business. No, it's your life is intentional. You're creating something intentionally, and you're using your business as the vehicle to fulfill that thing that's really fulfills you.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And I think where we're coming from is you already have the foundation laid. Yeah. The people we're talking to, 100 deals or more, you have the foundation laid to be able to now stand in, okay, I could create something worth my life.
Yeah.
Cool.
Right,
that went around in a nice little circle. I think
it's the power of conversation. I think, when you're willing to wrestle with the things like we wrestled with today, or anytime we're talking, and what I envision, again, say it again, but like these conversations to me feel like micro conversations of what can happen in a community of agents who are creating an intentional, creating intentionally with their business. This is what happens.
Yeah.
What happens. and not everybody, I always, what helps me in these conversations and what we're creating, it always helps me just to continue to reaffirm, like, obviously it's not for everyone. Some people just are not interested in this conversation. And maybe the majority are not interested in this conversation. But I do know that there are human beings in real estate who are tired of the GCI conversation. Not because it's bad, but because it just doesn't give life. There's more, there's something else asking for your attention, and it's not GCI. There are agents who are successful, doing great things in the world, wanting to make a bigger contribution, and there isn't a space, container, or community of other agents gathering to wrestle with it like you and I are doing in these calls.
Right. Yeah.
And it's life-giving, dude. Like when you and I have these conversations, I get so fired up. Like
I know, I love it. I'm like, okay, well, what's the next? So what's an action that we could take? Or, at some point it'd be nice to get other people. This is really what we wanted to build, was like, it's important to get other people in this dialogue, to have other things show up, to have other ideas other than you and I, our versions of what this is. And, I think it's also important that there be actions that we're out to have people take, or that, I don't know that that's the right way to say that. But there are actions that fall out of this that move this into reality. So it's not just an intellectual exercise. It's not just an interesting conversation. It actually,
right. It's not just self-development, personal development. It's, I agree with that. And I think real estate as an industry it's so already wired for production and activity that it is if we can balance the energies, like I spend a lot of time with coaches, and then sometimes in coaching, there's a leaning towards the energy of the being first, doing second, because it's a lot of what coaches work on with people. I feel like in real estate, the energy leans towards doing a lot, do. And there's an opportunity in a community like this to lean a little bit more towards center on being and doing. But I love that real estate agents know how to do, because like there's action attached to this.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And
I don't want to just talk about what you want to create with your life. Like, let's create it, which is an action. So where'd you go?
good. I'm just trying to figure out, okay, well, what is my life for? How does this connect, and what would be the action that I would take, this week inside connecting so my talk about my calling being people experience agency, and having, empowering. So what that means in this context is, empowering agents to have agency, empowering agents that are, in that category of 100 deals, to have the kind of agency, the kind of say in their life about their legacy. And, so what actions am I going to take this week to step that in, take a further step into reality besides just talking to you about it?
Right.
And I don't know, that's where I went. I was like,
I feel like, to your point about start with legacy, start at the end and work our way back. Like, one of the exercises that really helped me was thinking less about goals and targets, because that really starts to narrow your purview. Like you start to cut off a lot of things in the name of the target. So getting to the essence of your vision, or the essence of your legacy, what is the essence of it, is a lot more ethereal. It's looser, it's not as target focused, and it allows for a lot of the different expressions of it without any obligation to fulfill at any particular date. So if people could allow themselves to swim in the essence of the legacy and the vision with, like, for me, I see beautiful commercial buildings across the United States for holistic business people who want to share space, collaborate, mastermind, rent space, whatever. These dream centers are to me a part of the essence of my vision. I have no idea how to pull it off. I don't know when it's going to happen, but it lives in there as a very exciting, like every time I think about it, I get excited. I have a Pinterest board dedicated to it. Like there's stuff where I'm like this, and that's the whole point, is like it has future pull. It pulls me into
Mhm.
the legacy of it. You know, Gary Vaynerchuk's a good example of like him always talking about buying the jets and not really knowing if it's going to happen or when, or even that it's
Right.
going to happen, just that it is a thing out in his future that excites him.
Right.
My question for you or anybody else wanting to do something about it is to go spend time in what's exciting to you out in your future, that your life would be that a creation of and from.
Yeah, good. So there's, I mean, and then there's the personal stuff that I'm sure you have about you and Jenny and the time you have and where you are. And for sure, me and Kale and, like the
Sure.
water and, and then there's, and then there really is I love the idea of the dream centers. I hadn't heard that. That's super interesting. There's I haven't really engaged in this. I haven't really looked to see like what is it out there in the future that I could create out there what would that look like? What would my agents having that kind of agency, right? There's certainly causes and projects and events and missions being fulfilled in the world, from equity and justice and inclusion and healthcare and the environment and all the different ways that human beings want to contribute to the general welfare of each other would be unleashed, and that there'd be a way to get, that would be, it's the old Werner statement of, a world that works for everyone with no one left out. The opportunity of people really coming together to listen for and provide what's going to make a difference in any particular situation, all of it. Like there's I think if people had agency, right? I mean, when I'm looking at it from that perspective, there's a vision there that, like, it's interesting for me to play with. I don't feel obligated to land on something this morning about it,
right,
but you were talking about swimming in it, and it's just something that I, as we're creating this, I'm like, God, I really have not done the work for myself to look to see what does that future look like. And so that's nice. To begin to engage in that. And that would be something that would be an action this week to take, is, just to start to look at that. And, I notice all the in order to the background of all that, that shows up, like, okay, well, that would fix this and that would fix that. And there's obviously not where I want to go with that. So that's all interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. I think that's actually an important piece to that too, is like, that there doesn't need to be an immediate action. I think sometimes you can be too quick to action, because there's more of the essence of it that wants to fill in. And if you just go off and start building the structure, you could build something, to use real estate lingo, functionally obsolescent to the entire vision or legacy you want to leave. If you just go start building something today, like let it just sit in it. Just sit in the essence of it and let it fill in. That's full circle to the good to great stuff, because to have the discipline to sit in the space in between where you are and where you're going to go requires discipline to sit in that and not just rush off to rescue it.
Right. And there's that I don't know if it's the contradiction, but it's certainly the paradox of, okay, how long to sit and when to act, because there's also, fire, aim, which is a valid and valuable way to perform, in anything. Like when you do act, right, and you are going to need to act, you're not doing it with the conviction that you've done, this is 100% the way it's got to look. You're doing it with, it may in fact be obsolete before you complete it, but that's fine because you were acting and building something, and you're not attached to you're not attached to it not being obsolete. You're using it to iterate, 1.0. And where's that line? There's obviously no answer to that question, but that's the question that we're engaging in, is where's that line?
Well, and I mean, for those who, like to know the whole picture of it, like the way I teach it when I'm working with people through it, coaching people through it, is to start in the essence of it, but it doesn't end there. Then the next piece for me is, can you find a tipping point, a tipping point number, something that represents the energetic shift that your legacy would leave? Like, pick a number. I don't care what it is. It could be people, it could be I don't care what it is. The number of dream centers, but at some point you're going to pick like what represents the energetic tipping point for you with your legacy. The answer can't be one. It's going to be something that represents a shift. And once you have a tipping point, that's the second stage. The third stage is to then map yourself from here to that tipping point. Mapping like you were going to take a road trip. You're like, we're going to stop here to fill up on gas. Then we're going to get food here. Then we're going to get here. And then it's not the details. It's just what would I have to happen in order to create that tipping point? And then the final stage, the way I teach it, is now you're going to build your plan based on the map. So, that looks like shipping it. That's do, evaluate, do stuff, evaluate it, do stuff, evaluate. Now, because now I'm taking action, imperfect action towards something that is a plan. And of course, details will fill in, and of course, things will shift, but I'm in motion towards the tipping point that was informed by the essence. So, I mean, I think there is a structure and a form to this.
Yeah. No, that's great. I love that. I love that. So that would be good for, I can see engaging in that this week and looking to see what it would look like for that essence, or my calling, or whatever you're going to call it. Excuse me.
Yeah.
To be fulfilled.
Yeah. And to me, the playing with legacy and in essence is playful. Like it shouldn't feel full of obligation and responsibility and to-do lists, and it shouldn't feel heavy. It should feel inspiring and life-giving. Like it's a litmus test that if you're going down this road, you listening to this are going down the road of what is my legacy. If you're starting to feel anxious and heavy and like, stop, like pull away and start over, like, because you're attaching too much action to it already. Like you're getting too much into how the energy of how, and that often in my experience kills vision. How kills vision. You will limit the size of your vision because you don't know how to do the big version of it. And so you just got to stop with the how and just lean into your heart and be the thing, what excites you, So.
Yeah. And be willing to play with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it.
Cool. All right, man. That was good.
I think that's what I got in me right now.
Yeah.